The hall of the Galactic Imperium's grand chamber stretched impossibly high, its vaulted ceiling shimmering with the cold blue light of floating energy cores. Rows of alien dignitaries sat in tiered observation decks, their forms a shifting mosaic of scaled, furred, and carapaced entities, elders of civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. At the center of it all, standing before a tribunal of the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, was a single human. He did not look remarkable. No glowing implants, no elaborate ceremonial attire, no visible genetic enhancements like the other species present. Just a man, dressed in the crisp uniform of a representative of Earth's defense initiative. His posture was relaxed, his expression unreadable. At the far end of the chamber, Supreme Strategist Razath watched with the faintest curl of distaste across his predatory mouth. His kind, the Vreekle, had never known true rivals in war. And now, they were expected to take seriously the presence of a species that had only just begun to reach beyond their own solar system. He leaned forward, his armored claws tapping against the crystalline surface of the council table. Humanity, represented by Captain Elias Voss, the council herald announced, here to stand trial in the grand proving, as dictated by the laws of the Imperium. Their worthiness to exist among the greater species shall be determined today. There was no need for such dramatics, Razath thought. The outcome was already written. Humanity would be weighed, measured, and discarded. Elias inclined his head slightly, but said nothing. He let the murmurs of the chamber wash over him, the barely concealed laughter, the disdainful glances. They expected him to be awed. He simply waited. Let the first test begin, Razath declared, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The chamber dimmed as holographic projections flickered to life. A battlefield simulation materialized in the air before them, a scenario of asymmetric warfare. Two forces stood opposed. One, an elite alien strike team wielding cutting-edge weapons. The other, a ragtag human militia armed with what could only be described as primitive ballistic weaponry. The outcome was predetermined. Or so the aliens believed. The battle commenced. On screen, the human forces were scattered, seemingly disorganized. Their formations were inconsistent, their movements erratic. Against the disciplined alien soldiers, their casualties mounted quickly. A ripple of amusement spread through the council chamber. Pathetic, one of the observers muttered. Elias did not react. He merely studied the battle, arms crossed, his expression unchanging. On the projection, human forces began retreating, falling back in an uncoordinated manner, abandoning fortified positions. It looked like a rout. The alien strike team pressed forward, tightening their formation, preparing to deliver the killing blow. Then the battlefield changed. The moment the enemy overcommit, the humans turned. Trenches that had seemed abandoned erupted with concealed explosives. The open field that should have granted the aliens an advantage suddenly became their death trap. The retreating humans pivoted, cutting off escape routes. What had appeared to be chaos was something far more dangerous: misdirection. The alien forces collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. The laughter in the council chamber stopped. Razath's claws dug into the table. That was unexpected, one of the counselors admitted. Elias finally spoke. Was it? Razath narrowed his eyes. The human's voice was calm, almost amused. The scenario was designed to measure efficiency, Elias continued, his tone polite but firm. It assumed that overwhelming force and superior technology would guarantee victory. It did not account for adaptability, deception, or psychological warfare. He gestured toward the projection, where the alien forces lay in ruin. You mistook our irregular tactics for incompetence. That was your first mistake. Silence. Razath forced out a slow breath. Very well, he said at last. Let us see if you can repeat such ingenuity when the stakes are real. The next test would not be theoretical. And he would make certain that humanity's luck did not last. The chamber pulsed with an undercurrent of tension, the counselors murmuring among themselves as the failed simulation lingered in the holographic air like a specter. The test had been rigged, of that Elias had no doubt. The aliens had designed the scenario to expose humanity's supposed inferiority, yet they had instead uncovered something far more unsettling. The humans had won, not through brute force or superior firepower, but by understanding their enemy better than the enemy understood them. That, he knew, was far more dangerous than any weapon. Razath's expression was carved from stone, but his rigid posture spoke volumes. He had expected an easy humiliation, not a lesson in strategy. Elias could almost hear the gears turning in the supreme strategist's mind, recalculating his assessment of humanity. But calculation was not the same as understanding. Razath still believed this was a game of variables, of equations that could be balanced. He did not yet realize that humanity played by different rules entirely. Enough of these abstract exercises, Razath announced, his voice sharper than before. The true test of a species is in battle, not theory. And battle is won by warriors, not illusions. At his signal, a new projection materialized, this time, not a simulation, but a real-time transmission. A distant world flickered into view, its surface marred by the scars of ongoing conflict. Elias recognized it instantly. It was a border colony, one of Earth's outposts, relatively young and insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Yet it was here, now, that the Imperium had chosen to force humanity's hand. This, Razath said, gesturing toward the display, is ruined for. A contested world, rich in resources. Your people have claimed it, but the Imperium has yet to recognize your right to do so. His gaze bore into Elias, cold and unrelenting. Your forces are currently engaged against a battalion of my own troops. If they can hold their ground, then perhaps your species deserves the respect you seek. Elias did not react outwardly, though he felt the unspoken truth beneath Razath's words. This was no test. This was a message. The Imperium had chosen this battle, this moment, to force humanity to kneel. If the colony fell, it would not simply be a loss, it would be a statement that humanity was not ready to stand among the galactic powers. The live feed zoomed in, revealing human defenders entrenched along the colony's perimeter. They were outnumbered, outgunned. The Vrikal warriors moved with terrifying precision, their formations like a tide sweeping across the battlefield. Elias watched the battle unfold, noting every detail, every nuance. Your people are losing, one of the counselors remarked, her voice thick with condescension. Bravery is not enough to overcome inevitability. Elias remained silent. He observed. He calculated. The human forces were indeed being pressed back, but there was no desperation in their movements. No wasted efforts, no panic. They were maneuvering, adjusting. And then it happened. A shift so subtle that the aliens in the chamber missed it entirely. The Vrikal advance slowed. Their tight formations, so effective in overwhelming lesser forces, began to fragment. At first, it seemed like mere battlefield chaos. But Elias saw the truth. The humans had baited them in, drawing them deeper into the colony's terrain, stretching their supply lines, disrupting their coordination. The aliens had mistaken an orderly retreat for disarray. Then the counterattack began. Hidden artillery emplacements, long silent, roared to life, hammering the enemy's exposed flanks. Human infantry, once seemingly routed, emerged from the debris, cutting down isolated squads with ruthless efficiency. The Vrikal battalion, once an unstoppable force, was unraveling. The chamber grew eerily quiet as the battle played out. Counselors leaned forward, their amusement replaced by something far more uncomfortable. Even Razath's expression had darkened, his mandibles tightening as he realized what was happening. The Imperium had underestimated humanity once again. Elias finally spoke. You see a war of weapons and numbers. We see a war of information. He gestured toward the projection. Your forces never had a chance. They just didn't know it yet. For the first time, there was no immediate retort. No laughter, no scoffs. Just silence. Elias allowed it to linger before delivering his final blow. This battle was lost the moment you assumed we would fight it on your terms. The feed flickered, the Vrikal forces in full retreat, their once proud battalion reduced to remnants. A decisive, undeniable victory. Razath's fist clenched. This was not how the story was supposed to go. The silence in the grand chamber was thick, the weight of the unexpected defeat pressing down on the council like an unspoken accusation. Elias remained motionless, his expression impassive, though he could feel the shift in the room. The initial condescension had eroded into something else. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Razath was the first to break the stillness, his voice measured but laced with irritation. A single battle means nothing in the scope of a war. His mandibles twitched, betraying his unease. Luck favors the desperate. Elias didn't react. Instead, he studied the supreme strategist, watching the slight hesitations in his movements, the way his claws curled against the armrest of his chair. The alien wasn't just unsettled, he was recalculating. Luck had nothing to do with it, Elias finally said. You lost because you thought we were playing the same game. We weren't. He gestured toward the still flickering holographic display of the battlefield. You saw an outnumbered force, fighting against impossible odds. You assumed they were desperate. But we don't fight the way you do. One of the counselors, a tall serpentine creature with sapphire-hued scales, narrowed her luminous eyes. Then explain it, human. Were we failing to see? Elias exhaled, leaning forward slightly. You fight for dominance, territory, resources. You believe wars are won by superior technology, superior numbers, superior firepower. And by those metrics, we should be nothing but an inconvenience to you. He let the words settle before continuing. But humans don't fight for those things. The counselor scoffed. Then what do you fight for? A flicker of something dangerous passed through Elias's gaze. Survival. A murmur rippled through the chamber, the weight of that single word far heavier than any weapon. Razath's mandibles twitched. A primitive concept. No, Elias said, voice sharper now. The most advanced one. Your species, all of you, exist in stability, in control. You wage wars with the expectation of victory because you've never known true desperation. You've never faced extinction with nothing but your bare hands and your own mind to save you. His voice dropped, each word deliberate. We have. The chamber grew still. The implications hung in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. The civilizations before them, all their centuries of dominance, their carefully cultivated balance of power, it had never been truly threatened. Not like this. One of the elder counselors, whose species had ruled for millennia, leaned forward. You claim humanity has something we lack. Enlighten us, human. What is it? Elias smiled then, but it was devoid of warmth. We adapt. A new feed emerged on the holographic display, different from the battlefield but just as unsettling. Footage of past wars, past conflicts. Humanity's endless struggles against itself, against the universe, against impossible odds. Wars fought not for conquest, but for the right to exist. The rise and fall of empires. The destruction of entire cities, only for new ones to be built atop the ruins. A species that had never known peace, never settled into complacency, because the universe had never allowed it. You see us as a young species, Elias continued, his voice calm. Unrefined, reckless. But that's your mistake. We are not young, we are forged. Every hardship, every near-extinction event, every war, it did not break us. It shaped us. It made us something none of you can comprehend. His gaze swept over them, locking onto each alien leader, each observer who had once viewed humanity as little more than an insignificant anomaly. You believe you've seen the extent of our power, he said quietly. You haven't. A cold realization settled over the chamber. This was no longer about a single battle. It was no longer about a diplomatic test or a show of strength. The Imperium had made a fatal miscalculation. They had forced humanity to prove itself. And humanity had. The fleet hung in the void like silent specters, a graveyard of broken warships and shattered pride. Fire still burned on the wreckage of the Imperium's once mighty dreadnoughts, their hulking forms now nothing more than drifting monuments to arrogance. What had begun as an inevitable victory for the Empire had unraveled into something far worse, a lesson written in blood and fire. Elias stood at the center of the war room, his expression unreadable as he watched the data stream in real time. The Imperium's command structure was collapsing. Communication lines were filled with panic, fragmented orders, desperate requests for reinforcement. But no reinforcements were coming. Not anymore. A voice crackled through the secure channel. Their flagship is breaking away. They're trying to retreat. Elias didn't react immediately. He simply observed, eyes scanning the battle map as the enemy's once formidable fleet scrambled to flee. It was almost pitiful. Almost. He turned slightly, opened a channel. The transmission flickered to life. The bridge of the Imperium's flagship appeared, smoke-filled, flickering with failing lights. At its center stood Razath, his once imposing figure hunched, mandibles clicking with restrained fury. His confidence, his superiority, had been stripped away. Elias tilted his head slightly. Going somewhere? Razath's eyes burned with something between hatred and disbelief. "This war is meaningless," he snarled. "You are nothing. Humanity is nothing." Elias smiled. Not in mockery, not in arrogance. It was something colder. "That's what you keep telling yourself." A long silence stretched between them. Then Razath exhaled sharply, a sound of barely contained rage. "This isn't over." Elias didn't blink. "Yes, it is." With a motion of his hand, the order was given. Across the battlefield, the remnants of the Imperium's fleet, crippled, leaderless, vulnerable, found themselves at the mercy of an enemy they had never once considered a threat. There was no grand final stand. No desperate last attempt to reclaim control. The Imperium did not fall in battle. It unraveled. Fleet by fleet, world by world, it collapsed under the weight of its own hubris. The empire that had ruled the stars, that had dictated the laws of war and dominance, crumbled, not from overwhelming force, but from the realization that they had built their empire on an illusion. The illusion that they were untouchable. The illusion that humanity was insignificant. And when that illusion shattered, so did they. As the last transmission from the Imperium's command cut out, Elias exhaled, the tension leaving his shoulders. Around him, his officers stood in silent awe, watching the impossible unfold. They had not just survived. They had won. The war was over. Humanity had broken the empire.